welcome back everybody to this Move, Sweat and Suffer podcast. Both co-founders Lee Hazard and I, Joe Hotai, have the amazing privilege and honour to have Mr. Jared Miller in the house with us today, or Emevas, and there's a bit of a story about that, so we'll let him explain and talk about that for all of those that are aware of this gentleman. Mate, it's a huge honour and privilege for us to have you, that you would give us some of your valuable time to be here with us today to share some of your insights. I know Lee's got a whole bunch of questions, as do I, and I am confident that they're going to help all of those that will take the time to lend us their ears to hear some of the information that is passed on by people like yourself. So welcome, Jared. Great to have you here, man.
Absolutely. Hey, I appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for having me on, guys.
No worries. Hey, I'm going to kick over to Lee for the first question, because I find I usually hog the airways for a bit and ask a few questions, but I'd love it, Lee, if that's right with you. Sorry, I didn't mention that to you at the start, but maybe you can kick things off for us, bro.
I think this is the second week in a row you've threw me under the bus a wee bit, Joe.
Oh, have I? Oh,
I was expecting you to do the intro, mate.
I got you to ask the first question with Iron Wolf as well, that's right.
Yeah, you did that as well. So that should have prepared me, you know, with these like two heavyweights in a row, but like let's just go with it. But first and foremost, right, like this is a big honour for me. I just want to put this out there because Jared is a guy who has had a major influence on me, particularly in the last year or so, where like I described to Iron Wolf that my training was floundering a wee bit. These guys coming across them, they like sent a rocket ball up my derriere, so to speak, and kind of put me on the path to which I find myself now. So first and foremost, I would like to say thanks to Jared for just sharing his thoughts and his style of training online and allowing guys like me to have access to that and implement it within my own training regime and bringing me results which I had only dreamed about for the last 19 years of my training life.
Well, it's really incredible. I'm still just in my mind just some guy who's just screaming at walls online. And so whenever I see someone like take something that I've come up with and try it, well, for one, I'm like, what's wrong with you? It's usually my initial reaction. But then when I see what they do with it, especially like what you did where you took it and you made it your own thing, it's really cool for me to watch. And it makes it all worth it, because it can be a slog online dealing with just a bunch of people that just don't get it, and then the one that does just makes it all worth it. It just erases all the bad times. So thank you for doing what you did with it.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I gained the benefits from it. So, but the first question I've got is quite a broad question. What I would like you to do, and for the people listening, is I would like you to tell us the evolution of your training style, because it's something I personally find very unique. And the reason I find it unique is because I think that you're quite single-minded in your approach, but you bring something to the table in that respect, which I don't think a lot of people do. And my interpretation of your training style is you will take like a tried and tested program, like say 5-3-1, or like for example, and you will add like this big massive dose of conditioning on top. So basically you're doing like 4 programs in one in any given. At what point where did we go from to get to this point?
Yeah, great question. And I'll start at the end and then work to the beginning here. But ultimately, the premise I operate off of, I'll say that my educational background, it's political science. I got straight D's in all my hard science courses. Biology escapes me, anatomy, physiology, it's all Latin terms, I can't get it. So I'm too stupid to know how to do things right. And so the way I approach things, the philosophy I interact with, is that this idea that the body, it reacts to demand placed upon it. And if the demand is great, then the body will react by getting bigger and stronger and better, because it wants to survive ultimately. And if the demand is low, then it gets stagnant. It chooses not to do anything. And I'm always trying to find some sort of way to push my body to a point where it gets a signal that says, hey, I need to start growing, I need to start adapting, because otherwise the person who's running my body is going to kill me. I'm trying to keep it in fear of myself the whole time. And so that's that. That's the ultimate premise there. It's always, I always want to push my body to some sort of point where its response is going to be that it needs to adapt, it needs to grow, it needs to get better and stronger. And there's a lot of people out there that'll say that that's not how it works, and you need to use some sort of periodization, and you can't always push hard all the time, and et cetera, et cetera. And maybe that's what all the science says, but this works for me, and it's the reality I have. So I'll just play by those rules, and they'll be fine with me. So as far as like the evolution, in the beginning, I was into martial arts before it all started. That was ultimately what got me there. And in the way back, wanting to be big and strong is something I've always wanted. It's one of my earliest memories. I grew up in the 80s, so martial arts was everywhere, so the went together. And that was the crux of my beginning training. And so it kind of gave me an athletic background too. I got into lifting in high school to support that. I wrestled. And then I crept onto the internet just a little bit, and ultimately that was the worst thing I ever did. Just being honest, because when I was 14, I figured it out. And it took me like about another 12 years to relearn those things that I learned when I was 14. Because when I was 14, I was treating like an animal. Because I was 14, I didn't know any better, and so I watched a bunch of Dragon Ball Z and saw, just push yourself to the limit 100% of the time, you'll get better, and that worked. And then I learned about how you had to have certain rep ranges, and you had to rest a certain amount of time, and you had to eat certain foods, and I did all this optimal stuff, and I got terrible results. And just everything fell apart, and it sunk, and I was eating all the wrong stuff, and I was just getting fat, not very strong, and eventually I got into powerlifting. I hit a meet, and once I did that, I kind of opened my eyes and like, you know what, I know what I'm doing. I can stop listening to the quote unquote experts. I figured it out, which is a little cocky, but I think being cocky actually helps quite a bit. I think you got to have a little bit of faith and confidence in yourself, or else you'll always rely on other people to make your decisions for you. When that happened, I experimented with a bunch of stuff, and I just kept throwing more and more stuff at it and seeing what was going to happen. And then COVID was, of course, a big player in the evolution, because you guys have seen I've got a home gym, and and so as a result, I had an abundance of free time, and I couldn't interact with other humans, and I couldn't do martial arts, and I couldn't. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll work out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. If I have to run trash to the garage, I'll go ahead and do some chin-ups, and if I got an extra 5 minutes, I'll do 5 minutes of conditioning. And it just kind of became what it is.
Yeah, that was definitely the one thing that I took from your training style was this: just get work in whenever you can. Because I was always personally I was always bound by this: you must work out for 1.5 hours. If you work out for more than an hour, your testosterone levels will completely die, and you won't get any benefit. And you just become so limited with this bullshit that you read online that you just don't get anywhere. So to see a guy like you who was just doing like 100 chin-ups whenever he could, or doing like daily work where it was like 50 kettlebell swings, 50 chin-ups, and just hammering it every day, 2 or 3 times a week, it was like a bomb going off in my head, because you were also putting the pictures up like of how you were looking at that time to back it up. So it just flew in the face at everything that I'd ever been like that I'd read about online. Because like you says, online is probably the enemy of progress in the iron game or any fitness endeavour, in my opinion.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And when you were saying, sorry, Lee and Jared, when you were saying that was probably the worst thing you did, or one of the worst things you did when you jumped online, what do you mean by that? Was that because you saw all of this stuff that was there and you didn't agree with it, or what was? Can you speak a little bit?
That's a great question. And so the opposite problem. You're too willing to believe that you don't know what you're doing, and anyone can be an expert online. Especially I was there in the early days, like 2002 is when I made my first account, which is when I was 16, and so that's why Emevas, which is Save Me spelled backwards. It was a name I came up with for a video game character that I was building. And so, you're 16 and you've got some guy who says that he's like 26 and a world champion power lifter and can bench press 800 pounds, and you believe it. And then he's like, oh, only do 5 reps. Anything more than 5 reps is a waste. And you're like, oh, okay, so you're out there doing 5 reps of concentration curls, and God forbid you didn't blow out a bicep somehow, or 5 reps of band pull-aparts, because, 5 is the magic number. And you ask, what about 6? You're like, oh, 6 is bullcrap. You can't do 6. Like, it's... And so that's what happens is you get taken in, and they look like they know what they're doing. They've made it big. The reality is that the 3 things I always say is it's going to be effort, consistency, and time. And you gotta work really hard. You have to not take a lot of breaks, and then you got to do it for a long time. I've been training for 22 years. The only time people said I had good genetics was after 8. It's the damnedest thing how long those genetics take. But those 3 things are incredibly hard to sell. I can't go on an infomercial and sell people effort, consistency, and time. So these guys that are big and strong, like, they got to have a gimmick and a hook, and it's too easy to buy into it. And it's so much easier when you just shut that all off and just realize, like, look, we're all going to make it as long as we just try hard and do it for a long time. You go to any gym anywhere, and you're going to see dudes with big biceps and big chests, and because those are the muscles they care about. And it's like, well, what did they do that was so secret? It's like, well, they started training when they were 14, and they're 38 now, and they come to the gym 3 times a week, and they only do curls and bench. But you do that, and you're going to get big and strong. It's hard not to.
It's funny you say that, because like a lot of the conventional thinking that came from that internet era that you speak about was like you had to do squats to get big arms. And I started buying into that. Like, I was saying to myself, right, like, so I was telling everybody, like, you need to squat. If you want to look big and massive, you need to squat. But it was a lot of shit, because like, the guys who weren't squatting and that were benching and curling were the guys walking about with those big massive body parts.
It's the damnedest thing.
So it was like this information I was being pumped like through my mind. It was just leading me in the wrong direction. But yeah, I felt I was in my high horse to a certain degree. Like, I had more knowledge than these people. But the reality was I was just getting nowhere. It was the too much information.
Oh yeah,
was holding me back, and buying into the things that these people were selling to themselves, make themselves stand out in a crowded market.
Absolutely.
Can I just ask, how did you? Because you do quite a lot of writing and posting and stuff on forums and stuff, right, Jared? And so how did you come across Jared Lee? Like, how did that connection work? And then did you two start talking to each other then early on, or?
Well, I used to I post on a forum called T3h. It's Testosterone Nation. It's quite a famous bodybuilding website, and I've been using it for years, reading. And I was kind of more a lurker on the forums, but I started a log a couple of years ago just to keep myself accountable. Right. And I would dip into other people's logs, and I think it was round about last year. I'd seen like Jared's posts, and I'll be honest, initially I found them quite off-putting because they were just so matter of fact. I thought, this guy has got no empathy or emotion. he just points out the obvious. Like, he's actually, I found it quite annoying to read at points because I thought he's pointing at the obvious here, and there was a certain like flourish to his writing style. But then I started reading his log. And then he was posting pictures of his progress, and my mind, like, you can't argue with that. Like, at that point, you're thinking, I don't care about the fucking guy saying at this point, right? He's getting results. Like, maybe I'm being quite the contrarian here or whatever. So, and I just started reading the way he was training, and there was something about it that appealed to me because I had never seen anybody, and I've never seen anybody in the whole time that I've been in this industry that trains like Jared. And what I mean is the massive emphasis of conditioning on these programs, which are already considered to be brutal. I was seeing Jared do like Widowmaker squats, or he was doing like 20 reps of like 400 pounds or something, for example, and then he was doing burpees and kettlebell swings on top of that, and not just like some fucking 10-minute conditioning drill that these guys pin at the end of their sessions. It was like an extra hour, and then he would do 2 other sessions on top of that. And I love to train. I thought, fucking hell, man, this guy's getting results doing the things that I love to do. So why do I why do I not want a bite of that pie? So that was what led me to start communicating with Jared and just tagging him in my log and trying to get his attention. Do you know what I mean? Like, talk to me.
And what did you think, Jared, when you saw that, when he was reaching out?
Well, and I've had a lot of people that have reached out before, and so the initial was like, hey, cool, great, and then that's about it. But the more I became a fan of Lee, and just because that's the thing, he's spot on about me lacking empathy. That's just that is the truth. I've had 2 people that I've lifted weights with before. I wouldn't call training partners, and one of them is my wife, and she's a psycho athlete like me. She's a distance runner. She's run 38 half marathons and 2 fulls. Like, so we're opposite sides of the same coin. But one time I helped her with some resistance training to prep for a full marathon. I won't forget it. I had her on the safety squat bar, and she finished a set of it. She's like, this bar really hurts when I use it. And I said, yeah, I know, it sucks. I hate it. Anyway, your next set is like, that's how we work, and so seeing Lee like just take what I was saying and just shutting up and doing it, and like it was never complaints or questions or arguments. It was I love that. And one of the best lessons I ever got from one of my mentors was called Get to Yes, which you gentlemen are probably familiar with the idea, but it's like if you're faced with a goal or a challenge or an obstacle, all the ways you can't do it, find the way you can do it. And if that way is insane or psychotic or whatever, that's fine. At least find a way to get to yes, and then figure out what the limitations are. And so Lee's doing a phenomenal job of getting to yes. And anyone that does that, I'm their fan. We need more people like that in the world.
Thanks very much. Do you know what though? Everybody appreciates. One thing I've learned on this burpee journey in particular is everybody appreciates hard work.
Mm-hmm.
You can't argue with hard work.
Yeah, and on that, what's your thoughts around, because you do everything, like your setup is crazy, Jared. Awesome. Like I said, I was like, wow.
Yep.
I think looking back at some of the earlier videos, has that been something that you've just added to over time, or did you have all that stuff and then you were creating that space?
Good question. I'll tell you guys a story, and this was that I always wanted a home gym. But I didn't have one. I trained in college. I trained in the weight room there, and I got to be kind of the big man on campus by doing that because it was a small school. It was really the long and the short of it. We had no football team. We had no wrestling team. So I lifted weights. I kind of owned the place. And if people had problems with me, I'd just tell them to get bent. So then I graduated college. I get into the real world. I'm lifting in a gym. And I just seen the 2008 World's Strongest Man. I was amped up and I was doing deadlifts. And some guy came in and complained about me, and he's like, "You're deadlifting too loud." And the words are just about to come out of my mouth, and then I realized, oh, I'm not in college anymore. Like, this guy could get my membership canceled, or the fight could break out, I could get sued. And so that day, I went out to I bought a 300-pound weight set with a barbell, and I had a bench press off of someone's lawn with a sign that said "free" on it. And I did my very first workout the next day. I was following the program, so I didn't have enough weight for squats. So I did max effort good mornings by taking the bar, putting the hooks in the bench on backwards so I could stand up underneath it, walk it backwards, do 3 good mornings, and then put it back. And then I did a bunch of like front squats and lunges, and so the very first gym was just a bench press, a bar, and 300-pound plates. And that was 2008, so 13 years later, I think I crunched the numbers, and if I were to get a regular gym membership to compare, I'd need to lift weights for the next 157 years to pay it off. So I'm definitely in the hole.
Wow, man, that's awesome. What an incredible story, and just that building up, that's testament to the effort, consistency, and time
Mm-hmm.
building that stuff up.
Yep.
I've just been taking down notes of what you've been saying. I love that effort, consistency, and time, and the
For
get
sure.
to yes. Just
Yep.
find a solution, find a way, and figure it out along the way. If that doesn't
Yep.
work, then figure something else out. I wanted to ask you, Jared, injuries-wise, how's your body been over this course, or maybe even more frequently? How's your body holding up, because you do some insane training in and out?
That's a good question. So the thing is, I'll say that part of the issue is what people define as injury. And that's where I run into issues is people say, I keep getting injured, and well, my shoulder hurts. I'm like, that's being awake. Like one of my favorite quotes. It's been said by a lot of athletes, but ultimately, if I ever woke up and I wasn't in pain, I'd assume I died in my sleep. You get enough of these little niggling things that just change a life experience. So for me, the way I define an injury is dysfunction. When no matter how much willpower I throw at myself, I literally just cannot get my body to move correctly, then I'm injured. So I've only had what I would call 2 real injuries. Both came from competition, and one was when I was 16 and I was wrestling. I shot in on a guy, he sprawled out, and it dislocated my right shoulder, tore the labrum in it, and from there that shoulder's been buggy. I've dislocated it 5 more times, subluxed it a few dozen times. It does not sit right in the socket. And then in a strongman competition in 2000. I had to walk a 775-pound yoke 30 feet, and I made it 29 and a half. Then I dropped it. I went for a real quick pickup, and in doing so, I put all of my weight on my left knee. I ruptured my ACL, tore my meniscus, and fractured where my patella and tibia met. When we did the MRI, my surgeon said, "This is where your ACL would be." So beyond that, I've had real bad pulls. I was doing a set of squats to pins in 2007 where I squatted to the pin, stood back up again, and tweaked something so bad in my back that my wife had to tie my shoes for 2 weeks, and I couldn't deadlift for 3 years after that. And then that was actually before 600 in a beat, so I came back hit 600, so apparently I healed. I'll still retweak whatever that is once every 9 months now, but one of the things about getting injured is when you get injured frequently, you get good at being injured, and so you kind of know what to do at that point. It's a friend that you don't really like, where it comes back, you're like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to ice this for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to do 100-band pull-aparts, then I'm going to do some toe touches. Yeah, you develop your own protocol. I've pulled something real gnarly in my right glute a couple times. The shoulder's a mess. I get tendonitis, especially when it's snowing. I have to do a lot of shoveling. They'll flare up. And really the thing is that when people get injured, they'll injure one thing and then just shut down all of their training, and it's just mind blowing. There's the log that Leah's talking about on T3h. When I was finally cleared by my doc to start training again after my ACL reconstruction. And before that, I was still training, just very minimally. I was doing a lot of chins and dips and band pull-aparts, but he finally said, all right, you can do regular training. You just can't train your injured knee until you get cleared from physical therapy. So I said, roger that. So it was my left knee, so I was doing a whole bunch of right knee squats and right knee leg extensions, and I was doing seated good mornings, and training my whole upper body as much as I could. Whenever I hurt my shoulder, same thing. I trained the left side as much as I could. It's this. There's so many ways that you can still train when you're hurt, and really, I think a lot of people are excited when they get injured because they finally have an excuse to stop, and they've just been looking for this opportunity, and oh, I have an ingrown toe. All right, good. Shut down everything. 2 months at least, and then I need a full rehab, and people just need to be a little bit honest. They need a little self-reflection. They need to wonder why they're doing what they're doing.
That's awesome, man. I love that comment. And just, I guess, probably to tack on what I'm taking from that as well is at times people just need to harden up a little bit and find a way. That get to yes that you mentioned earlier keeps coming to mind.
For sure.
Awesome, man.
But would you not some people might consider that behaviour bordering on neurotic, that you're willing to put yourself through that pain when you should be recovering and letting yourself heal. Like, you'll just train round it, but like, you're not the type of guy, like, to me, who would just train round it. You'll train through it. You know what I mean?
No, I understand. It's a razor's edge. I will say that as far as like healthy is concerned, I think that ship has sailed with me. There's very much, you know, if I wanted to be healthy, like point blank, if I was saying I train for my health, regular light walks, I'd engage in some very basic resistance training, I'd stretch, I'd do some yoga, some light martial arts, I'd eat a balanced, nutrient-rich diet, and that would be it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a fantastic lifestyle. But my goals, the health is at most tangentially related. I want to be bigger. I want to be stronger. I want to be better, and I want to have good conditioning. And oftentimes, a lot of those are kind of on the opposite scale of optimal healthfulness, and you'll have to make those sort of decisions. And so, you're right. It's not what anyone would deem to be a healthy mindset. If self-preservation was the ultimate goal, then that's not the way to. At the same time, I draw from my own pool of experiences again, and I think about my grandfather, who only worked out when he was in the military, and that was for like the 6 weeks leading up to his physical fitness test. Then he would stop, and when away, he was in a lot of physical pain just from living. You know, anyone I know who has made it to old age didn't get their pain free, and so I operate under the premise that if I'm gonna hurt when I get there, I might as well have earned it. Something fun, and you know, be able to look back, because I don't get these cats that are saving themselves to be like the coolest, hippest 80-year-old in the world. I just, you know, what are you going to do with that body that you've preserved throughout your prime, where you could have been doing some crazy stuff? You know, this is the time to say, you know. And same thing, like I eat pretty well now. I have a very nutritious diet. It's very health focused. But in my 20s, man, I was putting away fast food, and the only thing I regret is not eating more of it, because it was delicious and you know, satiating. And now I don't get to do that because I'm in my 30s and I got to worry about it. But you know, you got to take advantage of each epoch in history. You know, when I'm old, what I hope to be able to do is just sit down with my grandkids, if I got them, and tell them stories and get fat and eat cookies, and you know, that's what those years are for. But people just want to do it backwards. It doesn't.
Do you know, I'm glad you brought up that point, because that's something
Me
I wanted
too.
to raise with you as well, was your nutritional strategy. So, like, to go back and what I was saying earlier, your training style blew my mind, but your nutritional strategy was equally as profound to me, because that was a paradigm shift for me with regards to using like nutrition for performance and eating to fuel the recovery. I had never thought of like eating in that context. Eating to me was just something you did to either bulk up or lose weight. However, you were coming from the premise that the food is there to fuel the training. No calorie counting.
Nope.
No, like, getting caught up in the intricacies of macronutrients.
Oh my goodness, no.
It was just nutritious food as often as possible, and I'm going to train even harder so I can eat more of it. And that was something I just found, and it's something that I've also carried over to the majority of my training at this point. So can you please explain to us your current nutritional strategy, because this is something I find very interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's so funny. I've said I've trained for 22 years, and as a result, like, I gave you my 3 key points. And in terms, like, training can get kind of boring to talk about, because it's like, well, what do you do? It's like, well, you work really hard, and then, you know, you go home and then you do it all. Nutrition is becoming really fascinating to me as a result, so it's fun to talk about. I eat low carbohydrate, and it's part of that is, like I said, I grew up in the 80s, so when I got into high school, Atkins became popular. and everything was low carb. And so I tried it then, and I was like, actually, yeah, no, this works pretty well. I like eating like this, and it feels pretty good. And it was always just kind of in the back pocket, and it was just something I gravitated towards. Once again, talking about how I didn't do so hot in science, there's no background to define this, but I do think there's a genetic component to how we handle certain macronutrients. I come from primarily Northern European and Scandinavian stock, and I just don't seem to handle carbs. If I eat half a potato, I feel really full and bloated. My wife, meanwhile, she has a lot of Korean heritage in her, and so if she can live off rice, but if I give her like 4 ounces of steak, she's done. Whereas I've put away like 32 ounces in a sitting, and then I ate the rest of her steak and had to not go through the fridge and get more meat. So basis there, and so when you slash carbs, what do you have? You've got protein, you've got fat, and those are your choices that you can play around with. And it restricts you, which I actually find to be pretty positive, because you make a lot of better choices with those restrictions. Because if you allow yourself carbs and fats, well, that's ice cream, that's pizza, that's nachos, that's all of the donuts, all the delicious things are carbs and fats. When it's now just protein and fats, well, it's like, well, that's meat. That's cheese, that's some dairy, that's vegetables, that's eggs, whatever the case may be. You can make bad choices with those, and I've done that before. Yeah, eating a lot of trans fats, but you have to go out of your way to really make some bad choices there. If you apply just a little bit of common sense and just a little of thinking, you're bound to make some decent choices. And so from there, it becomes a question of dosage, like what Lee's talking about. And absolutely, if you're pushing yourself hard and you need food to recover. And that's ultimately the way that I approach things. Some people do it backwards, and they're like, I need to eat to fuel the training session. And it's like, well, if you do that, it's very easy to overconsume. You can, and again, when carbs come into the equation, especially so, I've definitely fallen for that trap where you're putting away the dozen donuts before a squat session, and you're like, well, I need my training fuel. And it's like you're going to burn like maybe 200 calories from the squat session. You just put away 2,000. No, but instead, if you like bury yourself in a training session, you hit that Widowmaker squat, and then you come back and you have that training conditioning session, and then the best part is we know that tomorrow you got to do it all over again. Suddenly the sand in the hourglass starts falling, and you're like, I need to eat. I need to start putting away calories now because I need my body to be ready to perform in the next 11 hours. And then when you're like, and oh, by the way, I can only eat steak, chicken, eggs, avocados, nuts, nut butters. It's going to be good choices that are going to give you good fuel. And you can even make a promise to yourself and be like, look, if I eat my 2 pounds of steak and my half an avocado and my nuts and my nut butters and I get through all my vegetables, then I'll allow myself a slice of cake. You get through all that food in the beginning, you're like, I don't want to see any more food. I'm done. I've had enough. And so, I mean, the pithy way I summed it up was bury yourself in training, then dig your way out. And that's kind of it's creating that debt in your body and then trying to refill it before you have to dig that next debt out of there. And if it's good choices, if it's good material, create a good impact. And like Lee said, I've never counted a calorie in my life. When I grew up, the people that counted calories were either bodybuilders or they had eating disorders, and I was neither one of them. And no slight to those that are seriously suffering, but it's just not a sustainable lifestyle to me. And part of that is you can see I am an obsessive person. Like I've written a blog about lifting weights for about a decade, writing 1,000 words a week. It's I clearly I walk onto things, and my big fear would be if I started counting calories, that's all I would do is just be tagging all the time.
No, sorry. I'm like, I want Joe to see this because I said like at the start of the year he was like looking to put on muscle, and usually when you see people make these like they go on these journeys, you can see the fat accumulating over time as they bulk, so to speak. But with Jared, the only thing that was happening was his muscles were just getting bigger. Every muscle was just getting bigger. There was no like fluff kicking in. There was no like that blurry ab look or whatever. Mm-hmm. it was just the muscles were just getting bigger, and I was like, "What is going on here?" This is mind blowing. So
awesome.
that's why you buy into it, because the results were there,
Evidence is there.
and they were before your very eyes. Because, like you says, you get these guys online, and like T-Nation was always big for this. Where, like, there was a personal experience I had. I won't name any names, but there was a guy who used to write in T-Nation that came from the same country as me, and I used to love reading the information that he was putting out. It was very clued up, well written. So I knew the guy worked close by to my house. So I got speaking to the guy, and I says, "Listen, I'll come into your work and I'll meet you and we'll have a chat." And I always remember walking in and feeling incredibly underwhelmed. I was like, what the I expected this guy, this like jacked guy, and it was nothing what I had been led to believe through his writings. And it made me, and that's when I had that moment of clarity where any information that was coming to me through that point was always going to be, I was reluctant to fully take it on board unless I was going to see actual results, or actual like visual results or whatever proof.
Yep.
So, but yeah, to go back to what I was saying there, it was just very profound to see, like, to be reading about Jared's eating style and seeing this metamorphosis take place before my very eyes.
I love. Thanks, Lee and Jared. I love what I've been listening to and hearing. It's simplicity in terms of what I'm hearing from yourself, Jared, and it resonates. And I know that and what you do and how you've just spoken really well. Actually, it hasn't been rambling at all. I think
Good.
It's been great. I've been taking down a whole bunch of notes as I've been listening to you. But I think this particular Burpee community, Lee has probably spoken to you about it, which we're grateful to be a part of, will take so many great insights from your approach, the mindset to things, working in and around and through things. The nutrition piece, I think, is another really critical part, but you've just really made it clear and easy, or a lot clearer and a lot easier for me personally. And I know if it can get through my noggin, that can help. It'll help a whole bunch of others as well. But I wanted to ask you about your book. So there's a PDF out, which you've made available for free, right?
Yep. Yeah, everything I produce is free.
Would you mind talking a bit about that?
Sure. So it's Strength's little book of bad ideas. Mythical Strength is yet another handle that I have online. It's probably the one I'm most famous for. It's a blog that I've written since about 2012. It's approaching its 9th year now. And a little book of bad ideas. So kind of going off the whole premise here, I've said I'm obsessive, and so it's kind of a man thing from my understanding. When left to our own devices, our brain sort of just idles. And when it idles, it thinks about whatever it wants to think about. Well, with me, when left to idle, my brain comes up with just bad ideas. And the way I sum up a bad idea is it's a workout where after I've come up with it, I think to myself, oh, goddamn. Because it sounds like it's going to be absolutely miserable and terrible. And in turn, I need to see if I can actually get through it or not. And so one of the classics that Lee has put up on YouTube, which I think is awesome, and Instagram, is the Tower of Babel workout. And I love coming up with little cute names for these because it makes them stick. And it's called the Tower of Babel because it's supposed to punish you for your pride. And what you do is you start out and you do a rep of a front squat and then 5 burpees, which the Burpee community is going to love that. And then 5 burpees. And so I picked a weight that when fresh I could hit about 14 to 16 set. Well, following this protocol the very first time I did it, working up that way, I worked up to 8 reps before I knew that there was no way I could do a 9th rep if I tried. Well, cool. Now we got to work our way back down. And so now you go to 7, 6, 5, and still doing the 5 burpees in between. And when you're done out and your face is red and you look like you just went swimming and you're just done, like that's it. And so that's one of the workouts that's contained in that book. It's got 65 pages, something like 42 bad ideas contained within it, and it's divided into conditioning exercises, single lift exercises. One of my famous one, I'll throw in another explanation there, is Again, Zeno of Elea, he came up with this paradox of motion that you can't ever travel between 2 points, because to get from point A to point B, you'd have to go to the halfway point, and then between those two, you'd have to go to halfway, which means eventually motion can't happen. And so I'm like, well, let's do that with some squats. So you hit a top set of squats, 12 deep breaths, then you do half as many squats, 12 deep breaths, half as many squats, and then you get to finally one, and then you strip weight off the bar. Usually I do like 90 pounds, and then you just do it all over again. Max set of squats all the way down again, and then if you're feeling good, you do it all over again. And it's miserable, and what's funny is a part of that is my psychology. I'm famous for saying I hate training, and it's true. Like if I could be big and strong and not lift weights, I absolutely would. If I had a wish and that's all it took, but it doesn't work that way, and you have to train. And so squats especially are miserable. But with the Zeno squats, I've convinced myself that's just one set of squats, even though it's 12 breaths. But I'm like, no, that's just one set of squats. So I can do one set of squats. So you do your one set of Zeno squats, and then you walk funny for 6 days because your legs are killing you, and then by day 7 you're feeling better and you do it all over again. So there's another bad idea. And the thing is, they're all tested. I don't just sit there and come up with a bad idea and like write it up and be like, good luck. It's like, nope, let me try this out. Oh, yep, that really was. And so as a result, there are B-sides out there of bad ideas I came up with that I tried that either they weren't survivable, I got halfway through and like blew out a lung and said, okay, that's not going to work. Or I tried them out and they just kind of fizzled and they weren't great. So these are the ones that made the cut. And since I've released them, I've already come up with some more bad ideas. It was part of what took so long to get the book out in the first place. Is I was always coming up with something, but eventually I just put a stop in it and said, all right, well, let's release this book, and we can add on to it as time goes on.
Is this your first book, Jared, or is there other ones?
This is the first book I've released. I've written or started other books, but this is the first one where I was willing to just cut it out and let it go.
And this came out when, in September, was it? Or
that sounds about right, yeah.
Yes, man, awesome. Well, it sounds like that sounds like a great series, the Mythical Strength of Bad Ideas series. And you just keep pumping them out, man. It's awesome. One thing I just wanted to acknowledge you for at this time as well. It's been cool reading some of the comments and people that were wanting to donate to you, and just this, from what I'm picking up, there's a whole bunch of sincerity and humility about you, Jared. Just even when you mention it, everything that you put out is for free, and this was your reply. You mentioned to him and said, hey, thanks very much, dude. Basically, best donation you could do is pay it forward. Be a great online citizen and help out anyone you can. And that's powerful, man. That was such a great thing for me personally to read, because it aligns with, we had the privilege of having Iron Wolf on here, and
no, I saw that. It was good.
Yeah, and somebody like him, somebody like yourself, that will give of your time, not ask for anything in return, just to try to pay it forward, is a real testament to why I think and why I feel people like Lee and myself and others are drawn to you and drawn in by what you do. And I think it's just worth acknowledging and mentioning. And I just wanted to thank you for that at this time anyway.
I appreciate that.
Question.
Yeah, no, just to expand on what you said, I think that's a very, very good point, Joe, because like Iron Wolf and Jared, there's no snake oil, or there's no gimmicks, or there's nothing being sold, because they can't sell hard work. They appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that flies in the face of nowadays on YouTube fitness and the fitness industry as a whole, which is just a big mass marketing cluster.
Oh yeah.
These guys, to me, stand out because there's no ulterior motive on their part. They just want people to not waste their time and get a return on their investment. And as you put it there, Jared in particular just wants to pay it forward. I mean, the guy wrote a book, and and he put it out for free when most people would be marketing an ebook, building a landing page, trying to get clients. And I've seen people personally ask Jared, do you do online coaching? And he flat out refuses, which blows my mind, because he would be an amazing online coach. He's very inspiring, but he flat out refuses to do it, and I'm sure he'll explain why.
I mean, first appreciate the sentiment, guys. Appreciate the kind words. I gave you the story about me and the wife, and that's kind of what it boils down to. Is I know what works for me, and I know how to make me bigger and stronger. But other people, the lacking empathy is going to run into a head at some point. If people want advice, if people ever pay attention to how I write, I'm very particular. I never actually tell anyone what to do. When someone says something, I say, here's what I would do. Here's what I have done. Here's what has worked for me. But it's always phrased back to me. And they can take with that what they will. I mean, Lee's a prime example. He's not doing exactly what I do. He's taken the principles and he's applied it as needed for his situation. And so if I were an online coach, the instant someone, something or said this isn't going to work, I would just abandon them as a client. I'd be like, well, good luck, you're on your own. Which is also part of the reason why I do everything for free. For one, I do want to give back to the community, and I do want to drown out the people that are charging. I think it's that someone will come up with like a ROM progression program and charge $20 for it, and I'll be like, I'll tell you how to do that for free. I did it for 8 years and it works. Here's how. But the other part of it too is I'm not beholden to anyone. I'm no one's provider. No one's my customer. So if someone doesn't like what I write, I'm like, well, go get bent. Then read someone else's blog for free. I'm writing for me to read my material. It doesn't really matter what you think about it. I love helping people reach their goals. I love helping them find different approaches, or I love referring them to the old works. I love being like, read this book by Paul Kelso, read this book from the 60s by John McCollum, see that nothing has changed. But as far as like hands-on, one-on-one coaching, it would take a very unique individual for me to be able to work with them as a client and me to be their coach and for us to be on the same wavelength. Happen. And it's not ruled out entirely. Maybe it'll be something I do when I do have more time on my hands. But I would, if it were to ever happen, it would have to be someone that I could work with actually on, not online. And it really would have to be, you have to shut up the whole time. If you have any problems with it, you got to tell someone who's not me, because I'm not here to deal with that.
Can I also just say, because you just brought the Tower of Babel back into my memory. It's something I try to forget about because
oh my god, I hate that workout. You have no idea.
Do you know, like, because I do a lot of burpees, I was reading about the Tower of Babel and I thought, you know what, this actually will be quite easy.
Yep.
Because there's only 5 burpees between.
5,
yeah, there's only 5 burpees. By about set 3, I was completely. I had knocked my pan in at that point. And I was doing the kettlebell front squats, I think. We relatively lightweight, 220 kilos, but it completely tore me a new anus. You need to try this program, and you need to fit it into your 300 burpees a day schedule. I don't know how you're going to do it. Maybe you should do 30 burpees as recovery.
Just the 30 burpees a day.
But you know what? That gave me an idea as well, that program, to take it to the burpee zone here. Using burpees as a form of recovery, I think has been a very profound effect on my training over the last couple of months. Doing and that's something that I feel that the Tower of Babel it turned something in my head and put me down that path. I find that I'm kind of gearing towards more circuit-based things with weights, the kettlebells, and using the burpees as recovery in between, which kind of flies in the face of everything you read once more on Instagram. They tell you can't do burpees between sets of exercises because you're not going to get strong that way. And I'm thinking, well, I don't really want to get particularly strong. I just want to get in really good fucking shape. What is strength in that sense? Strength is relative. So, it just kind of ties in with the whole don't read stuff online and take it literally.
No.
Find your own path, figure out what works for you, try things, it might work, because I'm sure you've used that approach yourself, because like I said, your training style is very unique. I don't read about this training style anywhere.
Your training, Jared, when you are going about your day or your week, do you plan out either the night before, day before, or is it you walk into your gym and then you just come up with whatever it is you're going to do there and then on the spot?
With conditioning, a lot of it is just what do I have time for. And in fact, so on my blog, Mythical Strength, I just released an article called Conditioning is Magic. And it actually lays out exactly how I figure out conditioning. And it boils down to how much time do I have, what implements do I have. Sometimes it's even just being lazy, like what is currently loaded in my gym right now, because I don't want to take the time to take the barbell out and put on the plates and do whatever. So that's very on the fly. Typically that is planned out. I'm going to keep plugging my own blog here just because I answer a lot of questions by doing that. But I tagged Lee on this one, and it was called Devilish Strength Demonic Conditioning. And it's this idea that the lifting portion tends out pretty well. Right now, I just started Jim Wendler's 531 Building the Monolith. As Lee's pointed out, I've modified it to my own needs. I've added a bunch of crap to it, but the core structure, I'm doing all the things at the bare minimum that Jim requires in that program. And it's a 6-week program. It's based around 4 lift, the bench, and the squat, and it's got programmed percentages in certain reps and hit them all. In 4 weeks, I'm going to finish that program. I'm going to take 7 weeks where I'm going to do a diet break and lose a little bit of weight, but ultimately just not be eating so much food, because I want to condition my body to not need that much food, so that when I do my weight gain phase after that, I won't have to have this race and go into like a nuclear option of just mainlining avocados to try to get enough calories in my body. And so during that time, I'll have the lifting planned out, and I'll know what I'll be doing, and then I'll go on to John Anderson's Deep Water program, which has the sets and reps all figured out. But as far as the conditioning goes, a big part of it is that life gives you deloads. And so, case in point, my in-laws are in town right now, and they're actually all out there. They're going to a play right now with my kid, my wife, which this timed out perfectly. But that means I can't be doing things like Stone of Steel in the garage at 6 a.m. when they're all sleeping. I can't be throwing kegs or doing anything. So it's like, all right, well that just gave me a limitation on my conditioning, which is great because when you have limitations, it makes decisions a little easier. I've suddenly narrowed down conditioning. So it's like, all right, well, I can't do anything while I'm dropping weight overhead. What's something that I can do? Oh, well, burpees, those are pretty quiet. I can do thrusters. I can do kettlebell swings. I can do all sorts of body weight based conditioning. I can do jumps. And so that's going to limit it. Then it's like, all right, well, what time is it? A lot of times I don't set an alarm clock. I just kind of go off and my body naturally wakes up because I'm an early riser. So if I wake up, it's like, all right, I got 40 minutes before I have to start getting ready for work. All right, cool. It's going to be a 38-minute workout now. Versus if I slept in, it's like, oh crap, we're going to do a Tabata workout now because that only takes 4 minutes. And it's, if you want to talk periodization over the course of a year, you'll see that if you just kind of wing the conditioning based off what your time and limitations are, you're probably going to do all the things you need to do to get in shape. And what the funny thing is, if you try to be really rigid and regimented about it, life's going to throw you that curveball and it's going to screw up your periodization. It's like, well, today was supposed to be my 2.5-hour run, but I woke up late and the dog pooped on the rug and then my boss called. And so I didn't do that, but I based my whole month around that run and now everything's thrown. Versus if you just have an opening and you're like, well, through and I'm not doing anything Saturday, let's go for a long run. It kind of sorts itself out.
That's great, man. That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear you say that. And I wrote down a couple of things here which really stand out to me. You sound very well read, well researched, and I just wonder how and where do you find the time to be able to do that on top of your work, on top of your training, the multiple sessions throughout the day to read up, to be as well researched as you are, and then to spit out the information that you have. When do you find time?
Yeah, so just your deloads with conditioning, it's the same way. When my kid was born, I was working a job that had very flexible hours, and so I just read voraciously for about 3 years. I always had a book on me, and I was going through the classics ultimately. I read Dante's Inferno. I read pretty much everything that Friedrich Nietzsche put out. I read a bunch of Schopenhauer, a lot of German existentialism for some reason. I was drawn to that. I'm not sure why. And then, the lifting books I just kind of consider for fun. I have the Kindle app on my phone, And there's just never a moment I wasn't reading. And in truth, a big part of it is it's amazing how kids change you, because I certainly wanted to be as cool as I knew my kid would think I was. And I wanted to know everything. I wanted to be everything. I wanted to be even bigger and stronger. And so I just wanted to have all this information. But at the same time, like we talked about, it's too easy to let it get to you and get in your head and infect you. And you read some sort of study that says that milk drink 13 minutes after workout is more anabolic than 17 minutes, and you have to you have to know what's valuable information versus what's sort of like gee whiz Jeopardy sort of stuff. And a big part of that is just the more exposure you get to it, the more you kind of sort through it, and personal experience as well. But now. My schedule's not quite as open, and so I'm not doing as much reading as I was before. But it just like conditioning, it shakes itself out. If I decided I'm like, this week is going to be my reading week, that would suck, and something would get in the way. Feel bad that I didn't accomplish my goals of hitting X many pages. But if instead, you always have a book on you or the Kindle app, and a moment opens up, you can say, now's my time. Now I can start reading that book that I was working on. Or if a month opens up and you're like, I got nothing else to do, let's go ahead and do a little bit of reading here and there.
Awesome. Thanks for talking about that and clarifying that. Sorry, Lee, I'm going to jump in again with another one.
No, on you go, mate.
So I've got the stuff here. The Conditioning is Magic is the latest one that you put up on the blog, on the Mythical Strength blog. Awesome. Definitely want to get over and have a read of that. But what's your take on this burpee community, brother? Like in terms of what you see, have you, obviously you're connected with Lee. What are your thoughts on what you see within that sort of community versus the community that you have? So what I mean by that is, to try and give some context, I scroll through and read through, you like 140,000 followers that follow you, and I read through their comments, and they're they seem very similar sort of mindset to yourself. Also very complimentary, supportive and positive around what they see you do. They seem very open. From my view, when I was reading those, although they're different, and there seems to be a whole lot more wrapped around the sort of training that you do, because you're not just focused on one particular movement, which somebody like me is primarily focusing on or doing at this time. What's your take on? Do you follow? Have you seen much of what happens in the burpee community, sort of around what they're doing? And do you have any thoughts that you want to share, or have any comments around what you've seen?
Oh, you guys summed it up. We all admire hard work, and it doesn't matter what form or shape it's in, as long as it's there. And that's what I see in the burpee community. And there's a lot to be said about when you do limit your focus there. Just in terms, you've taken out a variable, which means you got to focus so much more on the other variables, and one of those is hard work, and that's what I dig about it. Going back to my past, so I'm an amateur strongman now. I powerlifted for a few years, and I still love powerlifting as an idea, because I love this idea of just focusing on three things and just zeroing in and saying, I'm just going to be the best at these three things, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make these three things as good as possible. And you boil it down even further, and you're like, I'm gonna take the burpee, and I'm going to use this to drive physical transformation. And I'm like, that's phenomenal, because I think limitations are awesome, because limitations force you to get creative. As silly as that seems, when you have too much information, when you have too many choices, you lack creativity, because it's too easy to just pick something else. But when you're forced, when you're limited, you really have to start coming up with better solutions. You guys have talked about like the home gym I have, and I love it, but every once in a while one of those bad ideas kicks in, and I'm like, I should just sell everything and just have a pair of squat stands, because I'm like, what insane training would I come up with if all I had was a barbell and some squat stands? I would just blow the lid off everything, because those are my only choices. And I keep coming up with the exercises in my mind of like, what would be the two things that I'd need? I boiled it down to like, if you told me I had two movements, it would be the log viper press, which is I've got videos of it on my channel, but just taking the log from the floor and getting it straight overhead, and pushing a loaded sled. And I'm like, I think those two things would just change me into a phenomenal athlete. Well, it's no different with the burpee community. You take this one movement, you're like, if I have this, what can I do with these that'll radically transform me? And I love the various approaches that I see people take. I love the permutations, the Navy SEALs, the 1 pump, 2 pump, 3 pump, 5 pump, all the ways that you can just take your body and move it through space. We'll circle back to the zero empathy thing again. COVID hit and gyms closed and people lost their minds. And it was easy for me to sit up in my ivory tower with my home gym, but I just got back from living in a hotel for a week. And I had a fitness center with 50-pound dumbbells, and my training log has a new workout in it every single day where I came up with something to do. And then the time before center, I was just stuck in the hotel room, and I did 7 different workouts, all of them body weight based, where I just came up with something to do every day. And people are just, they're so conditioned to having unlimited choice that you just take away a little bit of freedom and they don't have an idea of what to do. But when you really put your back against the wall and say, these are my choices, what am I going to do? If you really want to succeed, you'll come up with something. So no, I'm a big fan of the community. I love what you guys have come up with, and I'm always going to love seeing hard work, no matter what shape it takes.
Well, it's funny you say that, because it was Jared that actually validated the burpee to me, like before the Iron Wolf or anything like that, because I was in the belief that the burpee, like we spoke about with Elijah, it was a punishment exercise. I'd even read a few like esteemed fitness coaches break it down and say it was a completely stupid move, it was injury prone, you shouldn't do burpees, it's just an exercise done by really bad trainers to get the clients sweating and cover up for their inadequacies. And then I seen Jared do it, and I thought, no, if he's doing it, I'm taking a wee bit of that pie. And that's what led me down the Iron Wolfing, so to speak. However, there's just a point I want to raise, and this was something that really hurt my feelings with Jared. It was, he did a hotel workout, and it was 500 burpees he did. And I had done 500 burpees a couple of weeks prior to that, and it was my first ever 500, and he completely smoked my time. And this is a guy who isn't even a burpee practice, and I was absolutely raging. I mean, obviously I was complimentary. I was like, oh yeah, that's great effort. But inside I was like, I cannot believe this fucking bastard is just wasting my time. I'm on this fucking website talking about burpees left, right and centre, and this guy just comes in and busts out 500 in a fucking hotel room.
But I think that's a great testimony to the work and the variety, I think, as well, of what Jared does. And just sitting here listening to you, bro, for me, it's like, oh man, yeah, it's just, I love the fact that he took that. You feel limitations are awesome. I've really enjoyed the space that I've been in with just focusing in primarily on burpees and doing little bits of other things. But man, sitting here, spending time with you and listening to you speak, I'm more driven now and feeling more motivated to go, okay, yo, I've got some kettlebells and dumbbells outside and stuff that I'm not really using as often as I could or should. What can I do with those, and what should I do with those? And so I'm excited about what I'll do today. And
come up with some bad ideas of your own.
Yeah, I want to come up, but I'm definitely keen to look at the bad ideas, and I'll have a read of those, because you're somebody that we would love to keep having come back on this podcast whenever we're privileged enough to have your time.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to mention, I thought it was very kind of you.
What have you done, Jared? Sorry. What have you done?
I was going to say, it was very kind of you to not go dropping heavy weights and stuff and making noise when you got the in-laws there at the home. Instead, you found other ways to torture yourself. That was a funny point. But on here, I guess, how can people... So you've touched on a couple of things, but I really wanted our listeners to hear. How can people reach out, contact you? Obviously, you've got the Mythical Strength blog that you're on. What are the other avenues? Because we want to put these links into the descriptions and stuff as we go. What are other ways that people can get in touch with you, Jared?
For sure. So the Mythical Strength blog, the YouTube channel, so EMEVAS, save me spelled backwards. You can shoot me a message there. I'm on Reddit. My handle is Mythical Strength, all one. And then I'm on T-Nation, and oh boy, spelling it is stupid. It's again, I've been on the internet too long, so it would be The Pwnisher, but it's spelled T3h Pwnisher. But it'll probably be easy to find me. It's got my picture associated with the avatar, and the log is titled "Brute Force and Ignorance" is the training log. That's exactly how I live. Yeah, any of those places, you reach out, contact me, and if you want to go private from there, if they've dropped their email address, I can hit them up on email as well. But those are the easy ways to find me publicly.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for that. We'll make sure that we add those links and stuff in as well. Sorry, Lee, jump in, bro.
No, what I was trying to say was, what have you done to this guy, Jared? He was planning 500 Navy SEALs, and now he's got like 500 fucking Navy SEAls with like 20 kettlebell squats. This guy's a monster, Jared. He's the most consistent guy I know. Fucking, he does exercise, does it every day. So.
No, man, this has been, for me, Jared, really eye-opening, really powerful, and just really simple, great, raw, honest perspectives on what we're capable of is what I'm taking away from you. Like, we're capable of so much more, and I love the insights around maximizing and making the most of the time and space that we have in during those periods, like when you talk about in your 20s, if one of the annual regrets is that you didn't eat more of the junk food. That's a great. That's just, being 43 now, as I look back, I think, yeah, far out. Like, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's like, what could I do now? What could we do now, in our 40s, Lee?
Don't ask, mate, don't ask.
Great insights. I love the message. Like, you summed it up pretty much within the first few minutes of talking about your approach to training, effort, consistency, and time. Basically, that selling of hard work is hard for people that are caught up in the buzz and the glamour, so to speak, of what's out there in this sort of industry that we're in. But those that know, or those that hopefully eventually figure it out, hopefully sooner rather than later, will come across that effort, that consistency and time is all it boils down to. Having those restrictions, wonderful insights, get to yes. Man, I love that mindset and coming up with a solution, finding a way to be able to put these things or use the time that we have. That restrictions are awesome, and paying it forward. There's so much. I've got a whole couple of pages worth of scribbles and stuff here trying to keep up with the words that you were saying, but I've really taken a lot from your time that you've given with us today, Jared, and we look forward and would be honored to have you on again, obviously.
Absolutely.
And just appreciate you, brother, and we'll continue to support in any way that we can. We'll get this stuff out there, and thank you for your contribution and what you do, and doing that so willingly and freely for all of us, for people like us.
Oh, for sure, gentlemen. I really appreciate you having me on and letting me have my message out there, and I appreciate what you guys are putting out there. It's great to see positive forces like this in this community, and the more that we can do to multiply that and magnify it, the better.
Thanks, man. Lee, I'll let you wrap up, brother, and we'll sign off.
I just echo Joe's sentiments. I found that absolutely mind-blowing. It was great conversation. A lot of things to unpack there, but a very simple message underpinning it all. It was a big pleasure actually meeting you for the first time, Jared. You've been a big influence on my training style. I advise anyone who looks to get results, who looks to get a look into a mindset that delivers said results, to take a look at Jared's blog, or take a look at his login T Nation, which you will find a wealth of information that will help you achieve the goals you crave.
Awesome. On that note, gentlemen, thank you very much, Jared. Thank you very much, Lee. Move, sweat and suffer. Keep it going, and thank you again for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.